Hey there, friends, and welcome to this week's rendition of The Savvy Writer. Yeah, I'm Katie, and this week we are going to be talking about character profiles that you can actually use in your writing to help make you better. First thing is first, every writer works differently. Use or lose what I put in these videos. They are nothing more than my opinions, tips, and tricks, things that I have learned over my experiences as a writer. They are not rules, simply guidelines to help you understand what goes into writing a story and help you develop amazing writing skills that will last you a lifetime. The character profiles we are talking about here are used for every character in your story. They will deepen the story, grow your characters, and help give you a great understanding of your story's purpose. You will want to get a notebook. Dedicate this to your character profiles. You will be using a total of 5 pages in this notebook for each character. In this specific video, I will be walking you through the steps of creating this notebook as well as how to apply what you fill it with as you write the actual story. Nyla Fleetwood is a character from my own novel, and I will be using her profile as an example throughout this video. Here is the first page, the general facts. This is where you come for a general idea of who your character is. The first 5 things you want to put down on your general facts page are the ones you see in that top left corner. The hair, the height, the eye color, the skin color, and the age of your character. These things will give you a very simple idea of what your character looks like. This way, if you forget what color your character's eyes are, because let's face it, even the best of us writers aren't perfect, people do forget things, then you don't have to flip through your entire manuscript of an umpteen amount of words trying to find out what color his eyes are. You can just open up to the very first page of your character profile and say, oh look, his eyes are brown. Simple and effective. So the next 2 things you want to put down are in the top right corner, the occupation and the character's voice. You want to know where they are and where they work because that will determine why, what, where, and how they spend most of their time and energy. In Nyla's case, she is an elite. In my story, elites are the special forces of the king's most highly trained knights. The character's voice is also another matter. It is an expression of who they are. Nyla's voice is logical and dark. Another character in my story, Kieran, is very lighthearted. His voice is quite the opposite of hers, being fun and emotional. Who your character is determines what they will talk like. When I write from Nyla's perspective, she makes a lot of dark assessments, logical statements, and draws a lot of factual conclusions about situations. But when I write from Kieran's perspective, his mind tends to wander across the more lighthearted things in life, as well as making occasional silly observations and losing himself in his fantasies. Get this part down. If you don't know what your character's voice is like, you aren't ready to write the story. Get that together first and foremost, then come back and write. The next part you want to put down is shown in the mid-right section of the page. This is the root personality trait, the one thing about this character that will not change over the course of the story. For Nyla, that is the fact that she is always protective of her own. The next part you want to know is just above and to the left of the personality trait. You want to circle one out of each of these 3 things. If your character is an introvert or an extrovert, open or guarded, dependent or independent. These help you determine what actions your character might take based on the general parts of his personality. Next, you want to know their best trait. This is the part of them that makes them likable. For Nyla, that is her loyalty and sense of duty. The next part, most people find weird, but allow me to explain why I include it. I feel that it is important to have the characters seem connected to one of the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. This is not a religious belief of mine. I simply use it so that when the character is presented with these elements, as they will be many times throughout the story, they take notice of one specific one more times than they do the others. This adds depth to the story in more ways than one. Next, we will look at the fear and the motivation of your character. You want to know what every character is afraid of, because fear drives us to do the craziest things. The fear should be something that they will do or give anything to avoid. For Nyla, that is being trapped. The motivation is what drives the character to move forward against all odds. Usually, this is the opposite of their fear. So for Nyla, that's finding freedom. As a side note, in your main characters, you want to know what it is that makes them tick. What makes the scariest villain is one that takes what a character is motivated by and goes way too far with it. The hero sees shadows of themselves in this villain. It's more terrifying than simply just a bad man who wants to do bad things. Here, Nyla's motivation is finding freedom, so you could say that my villain's motivation is also finding freedom. But it is finding freedom to do things that involve infringing the freedoms and rights of others. Last of all, you want to know what 3 of your character's primary subconscious traits are. This is not something you would write when you are writing from the character's perspective, but from another character's perspective. These are the little things that they do over and over and over that they don't even think about, and they do nonetheless. But other characters notice this. For Nyla, those things are sideways glances, poorly concealed, pained grimaces, and the clutching at the edge of her cloak when she is attempting to suppress emotion. This sheet should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. And we're on to the next part. Hurrah! Character arcs! I do character arcs differently than most writers. I just use them to give me a general idea of what the character learns throughout the course of the story, building up to the peak, or the climax, and falling towards the ending, or the conclusion. What determines the shape of your character's arc is whether your character is static or dynamic. A static character is not going to change as the events of the story unfold. Their arc is different from this one, appearing as a simple line across the bottom of the page. However, a dynamic character is going to change drastically as the story unravels. The arc of a dynamic character has much more curvature and appears just like the one you see on the screen now. As you can see, Nyla is a dynamic character. The first part of the arc is at the bottom left. This is something dark. It's a lie that the character believes, which drives the story conflict forward and generates tensions, which pushes the character to take their first actions in the beginning scenes. Nyla's belief is that she must lie to protect those she loves. As the story builds and the events further unfold, the character begins to believe a new lie. For Nyla, that is the belief that she must lie even more to protect those that she loves from her previous lies. As the story becomes even more tense and the stakes get higher, another conclusion is made. This one is usually even more outlandish than the last conclusion. In Nyla's case, this is the belief that truth is impossible, which brings her to the second belief, which is that she can never be trusted again. All of that brings us to the story's peak, or the climax. As the story further unfolds, the situation forces Nyla to become trustworthy. As the arc ends, the last 4 parts are always seeking, realizing, connecting with, and accepting the reality of the situation. The truth in all of these lies that have kept the character from all of the good things throughout the story. Doing your arc this way is mostly just helpful in maintaining a solid, believable, and consistent character throughout the whole of the story. It helps some people, like myself, immensely, while it doesn't work with others. You're free, of course, as with all of my information, to disregard what doesn't work for you. Next section, emotional state. This is hinged upon a root emotion and 3 basic questions. How does the root emotion affect this character's daily life? How does the root emotion affect the character's goal? And how must this root emotion be let go by the character to bring about the desired end? This page is really just a way to help you understand your story's theme, but through your character. Our emotions come in different layers. We experience one primary emotion with several others layered on top. The root emotion is the primary emotion. It is the core of your character's being. In short, they feel this more than they feel anything else throughout the story. That is not to say that they don't get flickers of other things and other emotions. It just means that primarily they feel their root. For Nyla, her root is resentment. It affects her daily life by causing frustration, anger, and self-hate. This pushes her to seek isolation and fake happiness, as well as refusing to discuss with others the source of her resentment. This, in turn, generates conflict with the other characters, which causes more tension. This emotion affects her goal by causing her to take occasional rash action, due to her resentment towards people who mean to cause others harm. This, in turn, breeds resentment towards herself and stops her from taking necessary action. Isn't that a vicious circle? The last part is letting go. She has to release her resentment of herself and of her past mistakes so that she can make the right decision in the end of the story. She must also release her resentment of other people for causing harm so that she does not become like them. In this next section, I use the Writers Helping Writers Emotion Thesaurus by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. This is a really helpful resource for all writers, which I highly recommend. It gives the physical signals, internal sensations, mental responses, and cues of suppressed or long-term experiences with whatever emotion you can come up with. This book is golden. But if that's not an option for you, there's always Google. The main part you're going to need is the physical signals, or the body language, that goes along with whatever emotion your character is experiencing. That way, throughout the story, you're not writing over and over again something dull like, "That familiar feeling of resentment rose up inside of her." Instead, you glance at your character profile and say something more interesting and realistic, like, "Her mouth became pinched and her shoulders tense." Or, "She bit her cheek to hold in the bitter words her mind prodded her to say." You show, don't tell. That is the key to any great writing. As you can see, the left side of the page is dedicated to the body language that goes with the character's rude emotion. To the right, you have the other section. This is part for all of the other body language that your character frequently does. This puts your reader deep inside of your character. It also makes your writing feel less and less like writing and more like a story to your reader, which is the goal, isn't it? The final page of your character profile will be what I like to call a paradigm shift. Paradigms are the subconscious beliefs that every single human being has on the planet, and they drive us to action. Needless to say, when our conscious mind is skewed, so is our subconscious mind, which means so are our decisions. Every character has a paradigm, and if they are dynamic characters, that paradigm must change throughout the story, or shift. In Nyla's case, she begins her story believing that lying is the only way she can stay true to her duty while protecting those that she loves, and that chivalry and honor are the only righteous aims of life. But as the story progresses and she changes due to her circumstances, she realizes that lying isn't really protecting the people she loves, and loving them means sharing the truth with them, however painful that may be. Also, she learns that love is what gives life meaning, and therefore it is the most important. Thank you all so much for watching this edition of The Savvy Writer. Stay tuned because sometime soon I will be having a video of my top 10 best pieces of advice to new writers. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time.